Traffic is soul destroying. It's like acid on the soul. It's horrible. This is, I think, finally, there's something that I think could solve the goddamn traffic problem.
Hey, I'm Steven and this is Solving the Money Problem. If you're new, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. So in today's video, we're talking about Elon Musk's The Boring Company and what's going on. The Boring Company is now almost 5 years old, still an infant in the scheme of things. But today we'll be checking in and seeing what's going on, the latest progress, whether or not they're on track to meet their original goals, and also discussing the potential synergies between Tesla and the Boring Company. So let's get into the video. If you love crypto, stocks, and free stuff, or just want to help out the channel, check out these great offers. BlockFi are launching the world's first Bitcoin rewards credit card. People in the US can earn 1.5% Bitcoin back on every purchase with no annual fee using the BlockFi Bitcoin rewards credit card. Check out the link in the description. And for a limited time, you can get up to $250 in crypto bonuses when funding a new account on BlockFi, where you can use cryptocurrency to earn interest, borrow cash, and buy or sell crypto. If you want your free crypto, use the link in the description. And if you'd like up to 2 free stocks, check out the link in the description to WeBull. If you open a new account, you'll get 1 free stock valued up to $300 just for opening an account. And if you make an initial deposit of $5 or more, you'll get a second free stock valued up to $2,000. Seriously, free stocks? Yes, please. And finally, if you're in Australia, the UK, or New Zealand, you can get a free stock with stake, also linked in the description. Thanks so much for your support, guys. Let's get back to it.
Elon Musk is famous for electric vehicles, reusable rockets, and satellites that can beam down high-speed internet to the most remote regions of the planet. But in 2016, Musk set his sights lower. Much lower.
Elon Musk taking to Twitter this weekend with a new plan to disrupt traffic, digging tunnels to get around congestion. In a series of 4 tweets, Musk says he wants to open the Boring Company, which he says will actually happen.
Seemingly conceived a bit haphazardly as Elon Musk presumably stewed in LA traffic, the Boring Company did actually happen and was officially launched in 2017. As with all of Musk's endeavors, it set out with a lofty goal: solve traffic by building a system of underground tunnels where cars would zoom around at speeds of over 100 miles per hour. Traffic in the US is a serious problem. A report published by research firm INRIX showed that Americans lost 99 hours and $88 billion in 2019 due to congestion. Not surprisingly, Los Angeles ranked in the top 10 most congested urban areas in the US, behind Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, and Washington, D.C. But the vision is a long way from reality. After several scrapped plans for projects in different cities, some are beginning to question if the Boring Company can deliver.
So I just want to jump in here and point something out. Hard things take time. To give you guys some context, Tesla, originally Tesla Motors, was founded in 2003. 5 years later, half a decade after founding, they released their first product, the Tesla Roadster, but it wasn't until 2012. Basically 1 decade after founding, before Tesla released their flagship product, the Model S. And SpaceX is another great example. Originally founded in 2002, it wasn't until 2008 that SpaceX were first able to launch a rocket that actually reached orbit. And it wasn't until 2012, a decade after founding, that SpaceX were able to deliver cargo to the International Space Station. It wasn't until 2017, 15 years after founding, that SpaceX relaunched the first reusable rocket. So with that context, the Boring Company is still effectively in diapers. Let's continue.
So what's the problem with tunnels? They usually take a very long time to build, and they're very expensive. In fact, the LA subway extension that just got completed cost $2 billion for 2.5 miles. There was a subway extension in New York that I think cost $2 billion for a mile. So clearly something needs to be done to revolutionize tunneling technology. We need to be able to build tunnels way faster and for a hell of a lot less money.
Most tunnels today are excavated by tunnel boring machines, or TBMs. Although there are various TBMs for different ground conditions and tunnel sizes, they all use the same basic mechanisms. A TBM could look something like this. A cutting wheel pushed by hydraulic cylinders breaks apart the soil and rock as it rotates and transfers the excavated muck to the back of the machine through a series of conveyor belts. After some progress, the machine is stopped and the tunnel is reinforced with concrete lining segments before excavation can resume. The majority of the machine is made up of what are called the backup systems. These include the conveyor belts and muck removal systems, control rooms, electrical systems, and the rail tracks for the transportation of the precast lining segments.
The fastest tunneling machine in the world right now is 14 times slower than a snail.
This is a really poignant statement. 14 times slower than a snail is ridiculously slow. And it means that most tunneling projects aren't actually feasible and therefore never take place. The shorter the tunnel, the less time it's going to take to actually bore. But the problem is, it would make a lot of sense to have a 25-mile long tunnel, but it's going to take you a decade to actually do the digging. More often than not, these projects never actually happen, and therefore traffic just gets worse and worse and worse. If the Boring Company are successful in dramatically increasing the speed of tunneling by more than an order of magnitude, and in addition, enormously reducing the total cost to bore tunnels, this is going to completely disrupt and transform transportation itself. It's difficult to imagine the potential impact of such a disruption, but let me give you guys some food for thought. Maybe you've heard of Starlink, the constellation of literally thousands of satellites blanketing every square centimetre of planet Earth with high-speed broadband internet access. A handful of companies have tried to do this in the past, and literally every single one of them has gone bankrupt trying. Why is it now that Starlink suddenly seems to be the first company that can actually feasibly offer this service and already has well over 1,000 satellites in orbit? Quite simple. SpaceX has developed reusable rockets. They are the only company in the solar system to have developed this technology. This has dramatically lowered the cost of getting things to orbit, paving the way for new businesses like Starlink, just to name one example. If the Boring Company is successful in dramatically increasing tunneling speed as well as enormously decreasing costs, we'll see a similar disruption to the tunnel boring industry as we're now seeing with space and the launch industry.
Just automating the segment placement and solving the logistics issues will actually give you about a 5-fold increase in tunneling speed. The other thing that needs to happen is simultaneous drilling and tunnel reinforcing. The combination of automated segment placement and being able to drill while tunneling, like I said, is about a 5-fold increase in speed. Then with our design, we've also tripled the power of the drill. So it can drill 3 times faster. That results in a theoretical net speed increase of about 15 compared to the next best tunneling machine.
On its website, the Boring Company says that its latest generation boring machine has made progress and is now only 4 to 5 times slower than a snail. Werner Boegard is a chief engineer at HeronConnect, one of the largest TBM manufacturers in the world.
Increasing the speed 10 or 15 times, with the experience I have, I would have my doubts if that's an easy undertaking.
Kind of funny there, our friends suggesting that what Elon Musk and the Boring Company are attempting to do won't be easy. No shit, Sherlock. Since when did Elon Musk start companies to do things that were easy?
They're using tunnel boring machine technology, which is very similar to what I see used throughout the industry. The unique thing about the Boring Company in that regard is they are manufacturing their own tunnel boring machine and they're performing the tunnel construction. In
other words, among tunnel boring companies, they're the most vertically integrated. Side note, this has worked out relatively well for Tesla, just saying.
TBMs are also usually made to order for each project and can take about a year to construct. The Boring Company, on the other hand, offers only 1 diameter tunnel, meaning it does not have to alter its machine for every project. Experts also add that ensuring that all operations inside the TBM run smoothly is just as important as the speed of the boring itself.
TBM in the end needs lots of other secondary supply, like backfill concrete or backfill grout, materials like grease, maybe sometimes oil, spare parts, replacement tools. If one section of this supply chain breaks, the TBM is in standstill and has to wait till the replacements come.
Musk says he's got that covered too.
We've modified the cutter design. The dirt removal is continuous. Building the tunnel reinforcing segments on site instead of having them be built far away and trucking them in. Using the dirt that we dig out of the tunnel to form the concrete for the reinforcing segments. In other tunneling situations, they actually truck the dirt from the tunnel out and truck new dirt in, which makes no sense.
Over the years, the concept of how the system would work has undergone a few different iterations. In a 2017 video, the Boring Company teased a system where cars and public transportation pods are lowered underground by metal platforms and proceed to zoom through tunnels at 124 miles per hour, unimpeded by pesky traffic. The following year, Musk showed off the company's first demo tunnel in Hawthorne, California. The 1.14-mile, $10 million tunnel was a lot less futuristic than the vision presented in 2017.
Now, just want to jump in here quickly. Does anyone expect that a demo tunnel is going to look like the final product offered? I mean, just asking the question. That would be like assuming that a prototype vehicle was going to be identical to the same vehicles that a company like Tesla would be producing 10, 15 years later. Unlikely.
This is the entrance to Elon Musk's high-speed loop tunnel. Now this is a modified Model X. They were giving demonstration rides today. Look at these alignment wheels down here on the front. They're attached to the two front wheels on the Model X. They run along track walls inside the tunnel. That keeps the Model X on course.
During the demos, reporters were driven through the tunnels at speeds of up to 50 miles per hour, much slower than the 150 miles per hour that Musk had envisioned. The ride was also pretty bumpy as the alignment wheels attached to the Teslas bounced off the sidetrack walls. Though still rudimentary, the demo tunnel inspired confidence in investors and customers alike. Early on, the Boring Company was largely floated by Musk, but $1 million also came in from the sale of 50,000 hats, and another $10 million from the sale of 20,000 company-branded flamethrowers.
I've got to say, the Boring Company flamethrowers, not a flamethrowers, were a brilliant idea, raised a lot of capital, and they've since become great, sought-after collector's items. Let me know in the comments below if any of you guys or girls actually happen to own a Boring Company, not a flamethrower.
Musk even tried to sell dirt excavated from the tunnel as Lego-like bricks. In 2019, the Boring Company brought its first outside investment. The $120 million funding round came shortly after the company landed its first paying customer, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. The Las Vegas Convention Center loop opened to the public in June. The 1.7-mile stretch of underground road cost the Convention Authority $52 million and took the Boring Company about 18 months to complete. The eventual goal is for a fleet of 62 Teslas to be able to autonomously shuttle up to 4,400 passengers an hour from across the convention center's 3 stations. Currently, the cars are still driven by humans. The Las Vegas Convention Center loop marked the first completed public project for the Boring Company, but many of its other proposed projects have hit dead ends. NBC investigative reporter Sarus Farvar researched some of those projects for his piece on the Boring Company.
There were 2 proposals in Los Angeles. One was to build a 2.5-mile tunnel alongside the 405 freeway. There was a lawsuit over questions of environmental review that basically brought that project to a halt. There was another tunnel that was proposed that would bring fans of the Los Angeles Dodgers baseball team from an existing LA metro station to Dodger Stadium, but that also has not happened yet. In 2018, in Chicago, the Boring Company imagined a high-speed service between downtown Chicago and O'Hare International Airport, but 3 years after that, the new mayor is not really interested in this project, and that doesn't seem to have gone anywhere. And then finally, the really ambitious project that the company proposed, they published a 500-page environmental assessment in 2019 that would have connected downtown Washington, D.C. to downtown Baltimore, a distance of 35 miles. But again, that project doesn't seem to have gone anywhere.
If there is one thing that all these abandoned projects have proved, it's that working in the transportation sector is a tough business.
Many construction professionals will tell you that, it's not the speed of the tunnel boring that you need to worry about. It's the environmental review. It's the bureaucratic procedure. It's the permits.
Now, this is a fair point. Red tape and bureaucracy are the bane of a disruptive innovator's existence. A great example of this is the bureaucratic red tape capital of the world, Germany. As many of you will know, Tesla is currently constructing their Berlin Gigafactory. This factory commenced construction around 6 months earlier than Tesla's Austin factory, and it appears that it will open months after Tesla's Austin factory, despite commencing construction half a year earlier. Why? Red tape and bureaucracy. Simple as that. The Boring Company is certainly discovering that when it comes to digging tunnels, certain parts of the world, certain states, certain cities in particular, not so interested in improving conditions, reducing traffic for their citizens, but stifling progress and innovation. I guess the Boring Company will just have to go where there's a little bit less red tape. Did someone say Florida and Texas?
A 2020 analysis found that the cost of transit tunnel projects in Europe are about 50% less than those in the US, and significantly less than costs in New York. Costs in China, India, and Southeast Asia are even cheaper, about 1/6 of the cost of US projects. The researchers attributed the large difference to higher labor costs in the US and a more convoluted environmental approval process, not so much to the cost of the tunnel excavation itself. Aside from the permitting and bureaucratic challenges, there's the question of utility. Transit advocates argue that tunnels that transport one car at a time won't solve our traffic problems.
There is currently a project in Los Angeles to expand the Los Angeles Metro by 9 miles, and it's costing over $9 billion. It's important to remember that a full capacity, metro train can carry hundreds of people at a time rather than just 4 adults in a single Tesla.
I just want to take a moment to talk about this because there's more than meets the eye. Here we are watching a ride on the Boring Company's Las Vegas loop, and we can see something interesting here. It's not like there's one Tesla moving through the loop and that's it. There's a number of Teslas over the side picking up and dropping off passengers, and a bunch of Teslas actually following relatively closely to one another moving through the tunnel. Here we are over on the Boring Company website reading about the loop. We scroll down to learn about the capacity. I quote, "Loop passenger capacity is a function of the quantity of tunnels, quantity of stations, the size of the stations, and the quantity of operating vehicles. The Las Vegas Convention Center loop system is designed for 4,400 passengers per hour with 3 large stations, while the Vegas loop is targeting 51,000 passengers per hour with 43 medium-sized stations." So we can start to see the potential here. Depending on the number of stations, the number of tunnels, and the number of Teslas moving through each of those tunnels per hour, a Boring Company loop can easily equal or surpass the number of passengers per hour of a traditional transport system like heavy rail, a train.
Despite the challenges, cities like Miami and Fort Lauderdale seem eager to partner with the Boring Company.
We have now spoken with the Boring Company about building a 2.2-mile tunnel from our railroad station called the Brightline Station, which is in the middle of the city, all the way to the beach, and it would be 2 tunnels, one going east, one going west. And the business model is that you have Tesla vehicles with drivers that ferry you under the streets through to the beach, completely eliminating all the traffic.
Trentalis says that rough estimates from the Boring Company put construction costs between $10 to $15 million per mile, not including the cost of the stations. Details are still being worked out, but users of the tunnel would likely pay a fee for the service. The city is taking other bids for the project, but Trentalis says Fort Lauderdale already worked out a lot of the bureaucratic hangups that caused the proposed Boring Company projects to falter in other cities.
I don't think that was because of the Boring Company's lack of expertise. A lot of it has to do with the local politics, property rights, environmental concerns. Those are the same things we have addressed here in Fort Lauderdale, but have resolved. And so we are better prepared to partner with the Boring Company.
Just want to take a moment here to convey my appreciation for Florida for getting out of the way and trying to help companies like the Boring Company who are disrupting, innovating, and improving things for people, rather than many of the other cities and states in the US and elsewhere. I have a hunch that in the coming years, Florida is going to face ever increasing traffic issues because of the many people fleeing states such as California. So it's good that they're thinking and planning ahead and willing to work with companies like the Boring Company to alleviate some of the potential traffic congestion.
In addition to its vehicular tunnels, on its website, the Boring Company also advertises tunnels that can be used for utilities like pipes and lighting, freight, and even pedestrian walkways. It's still too early to tell whether the Boring Company can realize the grand vision that it set out with in 2017. But one thing is for certain, if the company wants to work on game-changing public projects, it needs to get used to all the red tape.
Now, on the surface, get it? Because I'm not even going to go there. This does sound like a reasonable point, but I'm actually going to take the other side and play devil's advocate here. Many of you watching will know that Tesla is currently production constrained. They cannot make enough vehicles to meet current demand, and that has been the story for the entire history of the company, literally. They've never been able to make enough vehicles to meet the existing demand. That's why Tesla has never wasted a cent on paid advertising. They don't need to. So, imagine this. Putting up with and getting used to red tape and bureaucracy may be akin to wasting money on advertising. Let me explain. If the Boring Company can continue to work with states that are actually interested in improving things for their citizens, rather than just talking about how they're going to improve things, they may be able to continue to scale their business quite rapidly and find themselves tunnel constrained, where they have more projects than they can actually do in any given period of time. And I actually think this is exactly what's going to happen. As each new project comes online, the Boring Company will not only learn and improve, but they will have hard data showing the massive improvement in terms of transportation times for the people using these services and the incredibly low costs for getting these services up and running. And this is going to create a feedback loop, because one city hears about the great success, for example, of the Las Vegas loop or the Florida loop, and they go, you know what? We actually care about making things better for the people that live here too. Let's get all the red tape out of the way and allow this project to happen here as well without taking 24,000 centuries to get done. That next project finishes, and on and on and on. It's just like when Tesla sells a vehicle, everybody rants and raves about how great a Tesla is, and they end up selling a lot more Teslas as a result. I think the same thing is going to happen with the Boring Company, because what they're offering is a truly compelling, disruptive, massive improvement over what's available today. Now, let me be clear here. I'm not saying that overnight, some of these bureaucratic states and cities are going to suddenly get rid of all the red tape. What I am saying is there'll be enough who have the wisdom and insight to realize that they need to do this, that the Boring Company is going to be able to work in those areas first and continue to scale their business for many years to come and leave these other idiots in the dust.
I spoke with the former Secretary of Transportation for the state of Maryland, a guy named Pete Ron, and one of the things that he told me that was pretty interesting was that there was an expectation from the Boring Company that, quote, we will start digging a hole, and when something gets in our way, we'll deal with it. And he said that that's just not how the system works in the public environment. But, you know, he was excited for the potential that this company may have. It has a very charismatic CEO, Elon Musk, who has shown to revolutionize both electric cars and space travel. So, you know, it's not impossible that the Boring Company or some version of the Boring Company can work to innovate transportation, but that just has not happened quite yet.
It certainly is going to take time, but as I mentioned earlier in this video, the Boring Company is still in its infancy, less than 5 years old. And we know that some of Tesla's biggest accomplishments, some of SpaceX's biggest accomplishments took 10, 15 plus years. And just finally, I want to talk about some of the synergies between Tesla and the Boring Company. Obviously, at this stage, the Boring Company exclusively using Tesla vehicles in their loops. Now, think about this over time as this company continues to scale. Ultimately, we'll first see thousands, then tens of thousands, then perhaps hundreds of thousands of Teslas exclusively operating in Boring Company tunnels around the world. The Boring Company and or the cities operating their own boring loops could become some of Tesla's biggest commercial customers. What's more, over time, these boring tunnels and Tesla vehicles may actually begin to disrupt above ground transportation modes like buses and even some trains. Another fascinating aspect to consider, especially over the short and medium term, is that there will be a number of customers using a Boring Company loop somewhere in the United States and ultimately elsewhere who've never before sat inside a Tesla vehicle. There's a very high chance that a small number of these passengers, after experiencing a Tesla product for the first time, will then go on to buy a Tesla for themselves. Obviously, in percentage terms, this is going to be a tiny fraction of the total number of passengers using these services. But if we think about this company as it scales, we talked about capacity earlier in the video. Some of these services alone looking at 50,000+ passengers per hour. Just imagine 10 of these projects operating, 500,000 passengers per hour. What about 100? We're now talking at 5 million passengers per hour sitting inside Tesla vehicles. That's something to consider. And I've saved the most exciting until last. Where do you think the first fully autonomous Tesla vehicles will legally be operating on planet Earth? Spoiler alert, it's practically assured to be inside Boring Company tunnels. But it's not the autonomous software that I'm most interested in this context. It's Tesla's infotainment. As we've recently seen, the refreshed Model S and X now featuring high-resolution screens in both the front of the vehicle and the rear, and gaming from any seat, including passenger and driver seats. What if, rather than staring out the window at the boring view, passengers are instead able to use Tesla's infotainment products and software, including information access, latest streaming services, and even in-car gaming. Now, hear me out. Just imagine that you're in Las Vegas for the weekend with a few friends, partying way too hard. You've definitely had too much to drink. You're not really in a state to be walking from venue to venue, and you guys decide as a group, let's get the boring loop. What are the odds that you guys in your inebriated state decide it would be a brilliant idea to do some karaoke? Well, Tesla's already got that covered. Now, I could give a million other examples, given the fact that Teslas are connected to the internet, they've got their in-car software as well as streaming services, the sky's the limit. But the point is this. Fully autonomous Teslas operating inside Boring Company tunnels may be the perfect place for Tesla to expand and refine their in-car infotainment. In either case, the point is that there's going to be many passengers of Boring Company loop services in the future who have an amazing interaction with a Tesla product for the very first time, and then a small fraction of those people ultimately going on to become Tesla customers, buying a Tesla vehicle of their own. The Boring Company is still in its infancy. The analogy with Tesla, it's just getting close to releasing its very first product, the 2008 Roadster, or with the SpaceX analogy, it's just getting close to reaching orbit for the very first time. The best is yet to come, and as the Boring Company continues to scale, grow, and expand, it can only be good for Tesla. So to sum this one up, in just a couple of words, regarding the Boring Company, I dig. I'm Stephen Mark Ryan. This is Solving the Money Problem, and I love you all. And don't forget the BlockFi Bitcoin Rewards credit card, where you can earn 1.5% Bitcoin back on every purchase. There's a link in the description. You can also earn up to $250 in crypto bonuses when funding a new account on BlockFi, also linked below. And finally, don't forget your free stocks with WeBull and Stake, also linked in the description. These great offers also help out the channel. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, if you have any ideas for future videos, let me know. I read all your comments. P.S. If you're still watching, you're awesome. If you'd like early access, exclusive videos, regular Q&As, our private Discord server and more, consider supporting the channel at patreon.com/solvingthemoneyproblem so I can keep creating content for you guys. There's a link in the description. You can now also become a member of the channel for some exclusive perks. To learn more, click the join button next to subscribe. And don't forget to check out our merch store. Either way, the best form of support is you being here and watching, so thanks again.